So Kerry is going to be our first speaker. He's going to share a little bit about his photography experience. Let's hear it for Kerry.
So this is me, August of 2000, hours after I arrived in New York City. It was the classic scenario where you agree with your two best friends to get a one-bedroom. And I got the bedroom, but the closet inside had a toilet in it. So despite that trauma, New York City was such an intense time of my life. It was, in a lot of ways, the best years of my life. This passion of all these other young people. I'd say this sort of voracious intellectual curiosity of everyone around me, and the city itself just had such a capacity for documentation, in particular the skyline. And you'll notice the Twin Towers are in the background. This was December of 2000. And you know, they came down 400 days after I arrived, and 9/11 really sort of changed my view from this sort of jazzy, celebratory take on the city to much more of a bleak, sort of straightforward view. And I think I really became concerned and passionate about contributing to the tradition of photography in New York City. And so my wife and I, you know, we lived there. In 2010, our son was born. And that was the bright part of a very hard decade for me. Freelancing was really tough. Professionally, by 2010, I was spent. So I had taken a job at Andover High School, and I was going to come back and teach. But leaving New York City, golly, I mean, it took us every bit of 5 years of living here before we stopped seeing New York City as this sort of throbbing phantom limb. If you're familiar with Mad Men, they talk about the pain from an old wound, which is nostalgia. But we ended up in a great spot in College Hill. We became sharing a duplex with the Jowdies, David and Megan. Their daughter now babysits our son. And I joke that we quadrupled our space for half of what we were paying in New York City. And as an educator, having the summers off was phenomenal, sublime. Every summer I would pick a project. So this was 2015. I took a 100-year-old lens and I attached it to my 4x5 camera, try to get these old, sort of in essence of timeless in summer Kansas. In 2016, I started my MFA, and the first project I did was a deadpan series of the sidewalks that just end in College Hill. And I thought, this is life's way of saying, well, your path in life is rarely straight ahead. There's detours and dead ends. And this was a project I did very short-lived, where I would actually take the negative that I had created, stick it back into a film holder, sandwiched with an unexposed sheet of film, and then I'd go back out and create an in-camera double exposure. And so I like the idea that a picture could hold sort of a simultaneous positive and negative, sort of like it had a charge to it. So there's this saying that all great art is on the verge of failure, and I'm not sure how much of a success this was. But this was a successful picture. The next project was all about the Hillcrest right near my house, where we had just bought a house actually. I love that it kind of touches the skyline of Wichita. You can see straight through there to the Epic Center off in the distance, which you don't get this view anymore because of Uptown Landing. And this is a time-lapse that I did. It's a large format, 4x5 camera. I had to find the exact same spot every several weeks. And so motion and animation, this is a real new interest of mine. So this next slide is from Kellogg and Oliver in 1996, before Kellogg got widened. And my friend Rick Wolford shot this. It's in the Library of Congress as part of the Historical American Building Survey. So I love the straightforward approach to photography the most. And so that's why for the past year, I've just been doing a 1-mile radius project from my house. So East Central Wichita, that's my home base. And I'm just thinking that, if I go a mile west and I can document what's going on there, the canal route, I always call it, people live under there. And it's a very different picture than a mile in the opposite direction where you have $1 million homes. So there's a lot of socioeconomic indicators in this project, but I think it's important to say that I want to prioritize facts over aesthetics, okay? I'm not so interested in capturing a pretty picture or sort of painting a rosy view of my hometown of Wichita. I'm all about truth, and photojournalism is very much my center, but I feel like this is more like anthropology or even archaeology. I mean, that gun on the left feels like something you'd find in an archaeological dig. But the pictures are incredibly sharp because I'm shooting with an 8x10 camera, so the resolution, the detail, it's all there. And I call this project close to home because to me, I feel like home is this thing that obviously I embrace it, but I also feel like I have to hold it at arm's length. And I say that because I want to sort of photograph Wichita with a kind of detachment. And so I feel this voice kind of it keeps coming back to the forefront more recently, and it's this idea that, hey buddy, you know what's way cooler than being a photographer in New York? It's coming home, replanting your roots, and documenting that. So